Welcome back to the deep dive. We take the sources, you send us articles, interviews, all that research, and we really try to build a strategic picture of the people and ideas shaping things around us. Today, we're getting into someone, well, pretty fascinating in the comedy world. A real lightning rod. Anthony Jeselnik.
Hmm.
And our goal here really is to get past just saying, oh, he does dark comedy. We want to dig into the actual mechanics, the rhetorical tools, the career moves, the strategy behind building this brand as the guy who just doesn't care.
Yeah, it's a deep dive into a real strategic commitment, isn't it? Because when you actually look at his work, source by source, he's not just telling edgy jokes. He's built this incredibly specific, meticulously structured stage persona. And the sources really highlight what defines it. That ironic misdirection, the non sequiturs, these really biting insults.
Delivered with that super arrogant deadpan thing.
Exactly. And crucially, this persona that just consistently takes these amoral stances on things.
What's so interesting, I think, is realizing his style isn't just one thing. It's like you said, it's calculated. It's this mix, almost a cocktail of different comedy genres.
That's spot on. That's the calculation. The sources point to him pulling from black comedy, shock humor for the themes,
Yeah.
obviously, but then blending that with the tight structure of observational comedy and that deadpan delivery.
There's more, too.
Right. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
He folds in the kind of confrontational vibe of insult comedy, that awkwardness you get from cringe comedy, and even the sort of intellectual step back of satire. It's like he doesn't just tell a joke. He's deploying this whole complex toolkit.
Okay, so let's trace this back.
Yeah.
Where did this super technical, specific, and kind of amoral persona actually start? Because the roots are maybe not what you'd expect.
All right, let's unpack this because, yeah, the start of this journey for this, like, really calculated comic is, well, it seems pretty normal on the surface. Grew up the oldest of 5 kids, Catholic family, Upper St. Clair, Pennsylvania. Seems worlds away from the guy on stage. It really does. And that contrast, that friction, is probably exactly what a comedian needs, right? His dad was a lawyer, mom a housewife. It's a very structured middle-class scene.
Yeah.
Rules, morality, probably pretty predictable.
Yeah.
So for someone whose whole thing becomes about flipping expectations and messing with moral norms, having that solid structure to kind of push against, that's gold.
And the sources actually point to this one really key moment, like a light bulb moment, back in elementary school. It wasn't just about being funny. It was about understanding the power behind comedy.
Oh, yeah, the postcard story.
Right. A classmate was moving to a town that wasn't seen as great, and Jeselnik makes this sarcastic crack about sending a postcard to their, lesser new address.
And the key thing wasn't the joke itself, really. It was who laughed.
It's a teacher.
The teacher laughed, the authority figure.
Yeah.
And that apparently taught him this fundamental rule he kind of built his career on. He put it later as realizing, if you're smart enough that adults get it, you can get away with anything. It's this insight that being clever, having that tight structure, it's not just how you make the joke funny. It's the shield. It lets the dark stuff get through because people almost have to admire the construction first before they can react to the content.
That makes sense. And that focus on structure wasn't just random. After high school in 97, he goes to Tulane, gets a degree in English Lit with a business minor, finished in 2001. That's not exactly the path to stand-up.
No, in that English Lit background, I think that's absolutely crucial. He wasn't trying to be like an improv guy. His first big dream was to write the great American novel.
Right.
So he thinks like a writer first. That explains the focus on, getting every word right, the precision, the super tight, almost mathematical structure of his jokes. A Jeselnik joke is like a tiny, perfect, dark short story.
So when did he shift from wanting to write novels?
Well, during college, he did an internship out in L.A.
Yeah.
And that apparently showed him there were other avenues for a writer, as he put it. Still focused on writing, though, just maybe not fiction.
And he was in a fraternity, too. Alpha Tau Omega. Again, seems pretty standard college stuff, kind of clashes with the later persona.
Totally. And then there's that story from his senior year, the sort of personal tragedy turned material. His girlfriend accidentally burns down his apartment.
Ouch!
Yeah, but it became fodder for his early stand-up attempts, which is, a perfect little preview of his whole method, stepping back from personal disaster, observing it, finding the dark joke in it.
So he moves to L.A. early 2000s, does the classic L.A. grind thing, working at Borders first.
Yep, Borders bookstore. And then he finds these comedy workshops, Greg Dean's in Santa Monica, and decides to actually try stand-up.
And how did that first time go?
Oh, an absolute train wreck, total disaster by his own account. He tried doing this impression of his dad getting stung by wasps. physical comedy, broad,
Oh, no.
died.
Yeah.
Completely died. He said it lasted like 1 minute but felt like 10. 0 laughs.
Okay, so that failure becomes really important then.
Hugely important, because it made him swear off physical comedy forever. It wasn't just, oh, I prefer wordplay. It was like, nope, that's not my weapon. His comedy had to succeed purely on the words, the structure, the deadpan. He basically narrowed his own focus, forcing himself to master that linguistic side.
So after Borders, he gets a job kind of adjacent to the industry.
Right, smart move. Worked behind the scenes as an accounting clerk for Deadwood. Great show, but he's doing the numbers during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And then hitting open mics at night, honing the act. And just to round out that background picture, he's of Slovenian descent, identifies as an atheist, which, gives him that necessary distance from the Catholic upbringing to really dissect faith, morality, death, without getting personally tangled up in it. He can stand outside the thing he's taking apart.
Okay, so he's got the writer's brain, he's ditched the physical stuff, he's all in on the words. But that specific voice, that trademark dark twist that still needed some shaping, he talks about influences, right?
Yeah, and the influences he mentions are kind of like the recipe for his style, You've got the really precise, economical one-liner guys like Mitch Hedberg and Stephen Wright. Jokes like Little Math Problem.
Right, very tight structure.
Exactly. But then you also have the sharper edge, the intelligence of Dennis Miller and Sarah Silverman people who used observation but gave it a real bite, sometimes pretty aggressive.
But finding his own specific thing, that dark twist moment, that apparently took a couple of years of grinding it out.
Yeah, about 2 years in, he writes this joke that's just weird and dark. And the audience reaction was so strong, he had this moment of clarity, like, okay, this is it. This is the corner I need to own.
And do we know which joke it was?
We do. It's the one called My Girlfriend Loves to Eat Chocolate.
Yeah.
It ended up on his first album, Shakespeare. And if you break that joke down, it's pure Jeselnik. It starts relatable, almost sweet. Then there's this bizarre non sequitur that just veers into darkness, totally unexpected. And then the punchline lands with absolute deadpan seriousness. It's the way he delivers the absurd, that technical precision that lets you laugh at the structure even while you're maybe recoiling from the idea itself.
Okay, so he finds the voice, then he needs the right place to sharpen it. And that place was the Comedy Cellar in New York.
Yeah. Finding a home base there was huge. They apparently gave him earlier sets, which helped him juggle things, between L.A. and then moving to New York.
And the cellar itself had a specific vibe, right?
Oh, absolutely. It was and is famously this intense, crucible, hyper-competitive comedians just constantly ripping on each other, busting chops, as they say.
Sounds rough.
It required you to be incredibly quick, have perfect timing, and basically grow rhino skin. All things that fed directly into developing that arrogant, insult-heavy part of his stage character.
He mentions specific people there who were masters of that.
Yeah, he pointed to guys like Jim Norton, Colin Quinn, Bobby Kelly, Keith Robinson. Said they were the best at that aggressive, super quick style. He learned the rhythm, the cadence for delivering those sharp insults from watching them, especially in that small, intense room.
And that boot camp paid off pretty quickly then.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
By 2009, he gets his Comedy Central Presents special. Yeah. Big break. That put him on the map for the network.
Right.
And they named him one of their breakout comedians that year. Look at the list. Nick Kroll, Aziz Ansari, Whitney Cummings, Donald Glover.
Wow, that's a heavy-hitting class.
Exactly. And he stood out in that crowd with his very specific dark stuff. Proved it could work.
Which leads to the first album in 2010, Shakespeare.
Yeah, Shakespeare. Even the title is a statement, right? It's like you're saying these short, nasty, perfectly built jokes. This is high art. This is literature. It elevates the whole project.
Okay, this next part feels like a really critical moment. A strategic fork in the road, maybe. He lands a job, 2009, first season of Late Night, with Jimmy Fallon, staff writer. And by his own account, this was the dream job before stand-up was even the dream.
Right. He just wanted to be in that writer's room, Throw out jokes with people you respected. That was the goal.
So what was the problem?
The problem was him. Or rather, the voice he'd spent years crafting at the Cellar. It was just fundamentally incompatible with what Fallon needed for a big mainstream network late-night show. His pitches kept getting rejected. Too dark. Always too dark.
Is there a specific example of that?
Yeah, the sources give a perfect one. There was this obesity joke he really believed in. He pitched it relentlessly. Every single day for a month, apparently.
Oh, persistence.
Totally. And Fallon apparently liked the joke privately, but he wouldn't do it on the show. Why? Because Fallon's brand is all about being likable, relatable. He was worried the joke would alienate obese viewers, hurt his connection with that part of the audience.
Which is the exact opposite of what Jeselnik was building.
Exactly. It crystallized the whole conflict. Fallon needs universal appeal. Jeselnik's brand, the one he was developing, required a certain level of repulsion, almost. It needed him to be willing to not be liked by everyone. The persona was designed to push away the very people Fallon had to embrace.
So the job just became miserable.
Yeah, he described it as, working hard all day trying to write in this voice that wasn't his, feeling constrained, then going straight to the Comedy Cellar, having a big stiff drink, and finally getting to do his act, the dark stuff. It was tearing him in two, basically. Professional duty versus artistic identity.
And that's a key thing for anyone listening, right? Choosing your path.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he made his choice. March 2010, he leaves. Walks away from the prestige, the security, the dream job. And apparently the producers got it immediately. They basically told him, we understand you want to go be Anthony Jeselnik. He chose the persona, the uncompromising voice he'd found, over conventional success. That's the moment the amoral stage villain wasn't just an act. It became his professional path. It had to be. So leaving Fallon was this huge gamble, right? But the sources show it paid off almost immediately because he pivoted straight into the absolute perfect arena for his kind of comedy. The Comedy Central roasts.
Ah, right, the roasts. Perfect fit.
Totally. He started writing for them in 2010. He loved the roasts, called them the Super Bowl of comedy.
So he starts as a writer again?
Yeah, first wrote for the David Hasselhoff roast. But here's the thing. His jokes, even just on paper, were so sharp, so distinctly him, that the Comedy Central execs noticed him. They saw the potential and offered him a spot on the dais as a performer.
And his first one was the Trump roast in 2011.
That was it, the roast of Donald Trump. And he said he knew, this is his big shot, his inflection point.
Why were the roasts so perfect for him?
Because the entire format demands cruelty and arrogance. The audience expects it. It's a controlled environment for insults. He didn't have to apologize for his material or ease people into it. The roast was the context. It perfectly showcased his style.
And the reaction.
Massive. He called it one of my favorite moments of my life. Because no one knew who I was, and it just really caught everybody by surprise. And the next day, my life was completely different. Instantaneous jump from nobody to viral sensation, basically.
Because people finally saw the joke construction in its purest form.
I think so. Before that roast, he might headline a club, but maybe half the audience wasn't ready for how dark or detached he was. After the Trump roast, the crowds got bigger, sure, but more importantly, they knew what they were getting. They came for Jeselnik. That let him be even more himself on stage.
And the network noticed that shift, too.
Immediately. Comedy Central comes back right after the roast and offers him this big 3-point deal. An hour special, commitments for 3 more roasts, and a development deal for his own show.
That's huge. That's basically the network saying, okay, we're investing in this specific polarizing thing you do.
Exactly. It was strategic validation. Proof that his gamble, leaving Fallon, sticking to his guns, had worked. And he delivered on those roasts, too. Charlie Sheen in 2011, Roseanne Barr in 2012. They weren't just one-offs. They were the engine that solidified his transition from being a writer who performed to being the performer, Anthony Jeselnik.
So that development deal leads directly to the Jeselnik Offensive. His own show on Comedy Central, 2013, ran for 2 seasons, 18 episodes, and he was creator, writer, executive producer, host, the whole package.
Full creative control, which was obviously crucial for him after the Fallon experience.
What was the initial idea behind the show? Was it always meant to be his specific kind of thing?
Well, the context is interesting. Comedy Central was actually looking for something to potentially follow the Colbert Report. They initially thought about maybe a 4 nights a week show, something called Midnight, but Jeselnik had a much clearer, maybe more defensive vision. His main drive, shaped by being shut down at Fallon, was just to have a platform for his monologue, a place where he could finally tell all those dark jokes that network TV wouldn't touch.
So he didn't want the typical late-night format, interviews, sketches.
He actively pushed back against it. They apparently did a test interview with a celebrity for the pilot, and he hated it, said it felt so wrong, it just fit me like a bad suit. He knew his strength was the crafted joke, not chit-chat. The show was built around the writing.
Which brings us to maybe the most talked about moment of that show, the cancer segment.
Ah, yes. The cancer support group segment.
Which you wanted to put in the first episode.
Right. Talk about a statement of intent. This was basically the ultimate test of his whole comedic philosophy, wasn't it? If the joke structure justifies the darkness, then doing cancer jokes for cancer survivors and leading your series with that, that's throwing down the gauntlet.
It's basically asking, can pure intentional darkness work as intellectual performance art?
Exactly. And the network understandably freaked out a bit.
I bet.
He said he had to really fight with Comedy Central to put that on the first episode. They were worried, that it was just too much too soon. It would turn off too many people right out of the gate. They wanted to, gradually introduce the darkness.
But he argued against that.
Brilliantly,
Yeah.
apparently. He used comedy history as his defense. He pointed to the premiere of Chappelle's show, specifically, that really provocative sketch with Clayton Bigsby, the blind white supremacist.
Ah, okay. Bold comparison.
His argument was, look, if your show is going to be edgy, if it's going to push boundaries constantly, you have to signal that immediately. You have to establish the rules or the lack of rules right from the start.
And it worked.
It worked. The sketch opened the first episode, got a lot of positive critical buzz, actually. Even got a call from Jay Leno, of all people, praising the segment, its bravery, its execution. It really cemented his reputation. This guy understands the line perfectly, which is exactly why he can step over it so deliberately.
So while all this is happening with the show, he's still doing stand-up specials, too.
Oh, yeah. Released his second one, Caligula, in 2013. Again, that title invoking Roman excess and cruelty, all part of the package.
Yeah.
And then by 2015, his profile's high enough that NBC taps him to host Last Comic Standing for a season.
Which is interesting because that's a pretty mainstream gig.
Right. It showed he could do the broader hosting thing competently. It proved the dark persona was a strategic choice, not the only tool he had.
Okay, so after navigating network TV, the next logical step seems to be streaming. Netflix, right? Where you can really control the final product, no commercial breaks, fewer content restrictions.
Yeah, so Netflix became the perfect home for his style.
Yeah.
Longer specials, totally uncensored. And his output there has been pretty steady. It started with Thoughts and Prayers in 2015. Critically acclaimed, but also different for him structurally.
How so? What changed?
Well, the first chunk, maybe 40 minutes, it's classic Jeselnik. Pure, cold, precision-engineered dark jokes. One-liners like daggers. But then, the last 20 minutes or so, he pivots. He starts telling these personal stories, anecdotes. Some of them pretty vulnerable, actually.
Really? That seems like a big shift away from the detached persona.
It was huge. Because it kind of humanized the monster.
Yeah.
He didn't drop the darkness entirely, but he gave the audience a peek behind the curtain. He talked about his grandmother's funeral, his reaction to the Boston Marathon bombing, getting the Jeselnik Offensive canceled, even the death threats he gets.
So why do that? Why add that personal layer?
I think strategically, it grounds the preceding darkness. It suggests, maybe, that the source material for all that calculated amorality actually comes from grappling with real, messy human stuff. The detachment becomes the coping mechanism, the armor. It added this necessary depth to what could have seemed like just a two-dimensional villain character.
That makes sense. And he's kept putting out specials on Netflix since then.
Yep. Fire in the Maternity Ward in 2019, and then Bones and All just came out recently, end of November 2024. These specials really show him sticking to his guns, refining that unique joke architecture, even as the cultural landscape around comedy keeps shifting.
Now, parallel to the stand-up, he's had this other massive success, right? The podcast, JRVP.
Yeah, the Jeselnik and Rosenthal Vanity Project. And strategically, the podcast is brilliant because it's the complete opposite of the stage persona.
How did that start?
It actually began back in 2015 on NFL.com, believe it or not. It was RJVP then, the Rosenthal and Jeselnik Vanity Project, with his old college buddy from Tulane, Greg Rosenthal. So it had this sports anchor initially. But the podcast is like this release valve. On stage, he's the controlled, cold villain. On the podcast, he's just Anthony. Witty, smart, but conversational, arguing about sports, news, whatever, with Rosenthal and their producer, Erica Tamposi.
So when he signed that deal with Comedy Central again in 2018, the podcast came back with him.
Yeah, they brought it back under the slightly flipped name, JRVP, and it's been huge. I mean, hundreds of episodes now, over 240 as of earlier this year.
Wow.
And that weekly, relaxed format lets him show off his actual personality, his intelligence, his humor without the amoral shield. Which, in a way, makes the stage persona seem even more like a deliberate, crafted performance when he puts it back on.
He also did that interview show, Good Talk.
Right, Good Talk with Anthony Jeselnik in 2019. 6 episodes where he interviewed other comedians. Using his platform to talk craft, which also kind of reinforces his position as a comedian's comedian, someone deeply invested in the mechanics of joke telling.
So when you look at it all together, the rigid specials, the confrontational TV show, the loose podcast, it's like different facets of a very carefully managed intellectual brand.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's sophisticated compartmentalization. He keeps the ruthless writer persona separate from, but also complementary to, the engaging conversational guy. Hashtag outro.
So, looking back at this whole arc, going from wanting to write the great American novel to becoming, maybe the great American dark comedian, it really feels like a masterclass in applying literary discipline to stand-up, taking that love of precise language and aiming it at the most uncomfortable subjects imaginable.
Yeah, and understanding, crucially, that the structure itself would be his shield.
So the big takeaway then, for you listening, is probably that Jeselnik's success really comes down to this incredibly disciplined, almost stubborn commitment to that specific persona.
Absolutely. He walked away from the Fallon dream job. He fought the network over that cancer segment on The Offensive, because he knew instinctively that if he compromised the persona, if he softened the edges, the whole thing, that calculated cruelty that defines his act, would just fall apart. That commitment is the brand.
And yet, underneath the totally detached, amoral presentation, we've seen the real-world anchors, right? The Catholic upbringing he pushes against, the long friendship with Greg Rosenthal, his relationship with Amy Schumer, the subject matter itself, death, religion, family. It's all deeply human stuff, just delivered with that cold, writerly precision.
Which brings us to maybe a final thought to leave you with. His style is all about these super tight, structured jokes, often short. Punchlines built on these amoral, sometimes shocking ideas.
Right.
So in today's world, where sensitivity levels are arguably higher, where certain subjects instantly cause outrage,
Right.
does the craft involved, does the obvious intelligence and effort poured into constructing that joke, the phrasing, the timing, the structure, does that meticulous construction itself act as a kind of moral defense, regardless of how dark the subject is?
Is the architecture the justification?
Yeah, is the sheer quality of the build enough to justify the darkness it contains? Something to chew on next time you hear a joke that makes you laugh.
Yeah.
Maybe makes you wince a little bit too.